My friend called me selfish for wanting my cabin back. Now she's left with nothing. Full story. The silence was the first thing I noticed. For 6 months, my family's cabin on Lake Arrowhead, a place that used to smell of pine needles and old books, had been filled with the noise of Sarah's chaos. Now, standing on the gravel driveway, the only sound was the wind moving through the Douglas firs and the cooling engine of my car. The keys were in the dirt. She hadn't even handed them to me. She had thrown them out the window of her packed sedan as she peeled away, screaming that word one last time. Selfish. I bent down, picking up the brass keychain. It was muddy. I wiped it on my jeans and walked to the front door. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from a cocktail of rage and heartbreak. Sarah had been my best friend since college. When she lost her job and her apartment in the city, I offered her the cabin for a few weeks to get back on her feet. A few weeks turned into a month, then 3, then 6. When I finally told her I needed the place back, my parents wanted to visit, and I had bills to pay. She unleashed a side of herself I had never seen. She weaponized our history. She called me a privileged hoarder. She said I was kicking a dog while it was down. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. It wasn't pine anymore. It was stale cigarette smoke, wet dog. She didn't have a dog when she moved in, and something cloyingly sweet like rotting fruit. "Oh, Sarah," I whispered, stepping inside. The living room was a war zone. The vintage Persian rug my grandmother had brought back from Istanbul was stained with large, dark blotches of what looked like red wine. The coffee table was covered in takeout containers, some molding. But it was the walls that broke me. She had painted them, without asking. The warm, natural cedar logs were now covered in a patchy, aggressive shade of electric teal. It looked manic. Half-finished. The paint had dripped onto the hardwood floors and dried there. I walked through the rooms, cataloging the destruction. It wasn't just messy, it was vengeful. There were cigarette burns on the leather armchair. The curtains were torn. In the kitchen, the sink was clogged with gray, standing water. On the counter, amidst a pile of unpaid mail addressed to her, was a note scribbled on the back of a pizza box in Sharpie. "Hope you're happy with your empty house. You value wood and stone more than people. You'll die alone." I didn't cry. I think I had cried enough over the last month of our text message warfare. Instead, I felt a cold, hard knot tighten in my chest. I took out my phone and started taking pictures. Every stain, every hole in the drywall, the pile of trash bags left on the back porch that had been torn open by raccoons. I was documenting the death of a friendship. The fallout wasn't contained to the cabin. Sarah, I learned quickly, had been busy. By the time I drove back to the city that Sunday night, my phone was blowing up. Sarah had taken to social media. She hadn't posted photos of the mess she made, of course. She posted a tearful selfie in her car, claiming she was homeless because her wealthy best friend decided she wanted her vacation home back for parties. She carefully omitted the 6 months of free rent. She omitted the money I'd lent her. "I can't believe you'd do that to her." A message from a mutual friend, Jessica, popped up. "She's in a crisis, Maya. Where is your compassion?" Then another from Mark, a guy we went to school with. "Pretty low to kick someone out in this economy. Thought you were better than that." I sat on my couch, a glass of wine in hand, staring at the barrage of judgment. The old me, the Maya who let Sarah stay for 6 months because I was terrified of conflict, would have typed out apologetic paragraphs. I would have tried to explain. Instead, I opened the group chat where Sarah had been lamenting her victimhood. I didn't type a single word. I just uploaded the gallery. Image 1, the wine-stained antique rug. Image 2, the teal paint covering the natural wood. Image 3, the clogged molding sink. Image 4, the cigarette burns on the furniture. Image 5, the piles of trash. Then, I added one screenshot. The bank transfer showing I had sent Sarah $2,000 for moving expenses 3 days ago, just to get her to leave without a sheriff involved. I hit send. The group chat went silent. The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Jessica was the first to pivot. "Whoa. Is that the cabin?" "Yes," I typed. "This is how she left it after 6 months of living rent-free. I'm done. Anyone who wants to host her next, feel free to step up. I can forward you her number." No one volunteered. 2 weeks later, I was back at the cabin with a contractor, assessing the damage. It was going to cost $15,000 to restore the wood and replace the ruined furnishings. I was scraping dried teal paint off the windowsill when a courier van pulled into the driveway. "Maya Lin?" the driver asked. "Yes." He handed me a large envelope. "You've been served." I laughed. It was a dark, dry laugh that startled the contractor. "Of course I have." I sat on the porch steps and opened it. Sarah was suing me. Or at least she was trying to. The letter was from a shady strip mall law firm. She was claiming illegal eviction, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and, this was the kicker, reimbursement for home improvements. She wanted me to pay her for painting my walls teal. She was also claiming squatters' rights, arguing that because she was there for 6 months, she was a tenant, and I hadn't given her the proper 60-day notice. My blood ran cold. I knew she was delusional, but I also knew the law could be tricky. I called my lawyer, David, immediately. "She doesn't have a lease," I told him, pacing the porch. "She never paid a dime." "In some states, that doesn't matter," David said, his voice calm. If she received mail there, if she established residency, it gets messy. Did you change the locks? Yes, immediately. Okay. Don't talk to her. Don't text her. Send me everything. The texts where she agreed it was temporary. The photos of the damage. And Maya? Do not offer her a settlement. People like this rely on you wanting the headache to go away. We have to be the bigger headache. The next month was a grueling game of chess. Sarah tried to spin the narrative that the damage was pre-existing or accidental. She claimed the money I sent her was a gift, not moving assistance. But Sarah had made a mistake. In her arrogance, she had left a box of documents in the attic of the cabin. She had probably hidden them there and forgot them in her haste to storm out. I found the box while checking for leaks. Inside wasn't just junk. It was a paper trail of her life. There were letters from her parents, cutting her off 2 years ago for stealing from them. There were credit card statements showing that while she was living destitute in my cabin, she was spending hundreds of dollars a month on online gambling and designer clothes, which explained why she never had money for food. And there was a diary. I debated reading it. It felt like a violation. But she was suing me for $50,000. I opened it. The entries from the last 6 months were chilling. There was no gratitude, only resentment. February 12th. Maya came up this weekend. She acts like she's the Queen of England just because she owns this dump. I hate how she looks at me with that pity. I should burn this place down when I leave. March 4th. I can't believe she asked me to pay the electric bill. Selfish bitch. She has a salary. I have nothing. I deserve this space more than she does. I handed the box over to David. This is character evidence, David said. But more importantly, the gambling debts. She's desperate. She's not suing you because she thinks she's right. She's suing you because she's drowning and you're the only life raft she knows how to puncture. We met for a deposition 3 months later. It was in a sterile conference room in the city. Sarah sat across from me. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her eyes sunken. She was wearing a coat I recognized, one I had lost a year ago. When she saw me, she didn't look ashamed. She looked hungry. Her lawyer was a tired-looking man who clearly hadn't been paid up front. He started with the standard intimidation tactics, talking about tenant rights and emotional trauma. David let him finish. Then he slid a folder across the table. Before we continue, David said, we are countersuing for property damage in the amount of $18,000. We have a contractor's assessment, photos timestamped from the day of departure, and... He paused, tapping the file. Witness statements from the neighbors who saw Sarah hosting unauthorized parties and engaging in illegal bonfires during a burn ban. Sarah's lawyer frowned and opened the folder. He looked at the photos of the teal walls. He looked at the gambling records. He looked at the text messages where Sarah explicitly said, "Thank you so much for letting me crash for a few weeks. I promise I'll be out by November." The lawyer closed the folder. He leaned over and whispered something to Sarah. Sarah, slamming her hand on the table, made us all jump. "She can afford it," Sarah screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She has everything. She has a career, a house, a cabin, a fiancé. I have nothing. Why is she doing this to me? It's just money to her." "It's not about the money, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. "It's about the fact that you feel entitled to destroy what isn't yours." "You were supposed to be my friend," she wailed. It was a performance, but it was also genuine pain. The pain of someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own life. "I was your friend," I said. "I was the only friend you had left. And you treated me like an ATM with a pulse. You called me selfish? Selfish is taking a sanctuary and turning it into a garbage dump. Selfish is suing the person who kept a roof over your head." I stood up. "Drop the lawsuit, Sarah. Or I will pursue the damages, and I will garnish every paycheck you ever make for the rest of your life. I will make sure a judgment shows up on every background check you ever have." It was a bluff mostly. I didn't want to be tied to her for life. I just wanted her gone. Sarah looked at her lawyer. He shook his head, signaling he was done. He started packing his briefcase. Sarah looked back at me. The malice evaporated, replaced by a terrifying, hollow emptiness. "Maya, please. I don't have anywhere to go." It was the moment of truth. The old Maya would have crumbled. The old Maya would have written a check, or found her a motel, or tried to fix it. I looked at the woman who had poisoned my home, and tried to assassinate my character. "You're an adult, Sarah," I said. "Figure it out." I walked out of the room and didn't look back. The lawsuit was dropped the next day. I spent the next spring restoring the cabin. It was therapeutic. I didn't just clean it, I changed it. I sanded down the teal walls until my arms ached and the wood was raw again. I stained them a lighter, warmer color. I ripped up the ruined carpets and laid down new ones. I burned the furniture she had ruined in a bonfire, a legal one, and bought simple, sturdy pieces. I was reclaiming the space. I was scrubbing her ghost out of the grain of the wood. One afternoon, while I was painting the porch, a car pulled up. It was Jessica, the friend who had initially defended Sarah. She walked up the driveway sheepishly, holding a bottle of wine. "Peace offering?" she asked. I wiped my hands on a rag. "Depends. Did you bring a brush?" She smiled, relieved. "We spent the afternoon painting." "I saw her," Jessica said eventually, dipping her brush into the white paint. "I didn't need to ask who." "How is she?" "Not good," Jessica said. She moved back to her hometown, moving in with an aunt she hates. She tried to pull the same story on everyone there, how you were the villain. But word travels. People know you, Maya. And the photos were hard to argue with. I didn't want to humiliate her, I said. She humiliated herself, Jessica corrected. You just turned on the lights. Jessica hesitated. She asked for your number. She wanted to apologize. I stopped painting. The sun was setting over the lake, turning the water a brilliant, shimmering gold. I thought about the emptiness in Sarah's eyes at the deposition. I thought about the selfish text. No, I said. No. I forgive her. I said, and I meant it. The anger had faded, leaving only a dull scar. But I don't want her in my life. Some doors, once you kick them down, you can't walk back through. 6 months after the eviction, the cabin was finished. It looked different now. Brighter. Clean. I hosted a dinner party for my actual friends. The ones who brought food, who helped clean up, who respected my boundaries. We sat on the deck, drinking wine, watching the stars come out. My fiancé, Ben, wrapped his arm around me. You did good, babe. Place feels light. It did. I went inside to get another bottle of wine. On the counter, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Venmo. Sarah sent you $50. Note for the rug. I know it's not enough. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen. $50 against $18,000 in damages. It was a drop in the ocean. But it was the first time Sarah had ever paid for anything. I didn't reply. I didn't accept the money, and I didn't decline it. I just let it sit there. I put the phone down and walked back out to the deck, to the laughter and the warmth of people who loved me. Sarah was right about one thing. I had been selfish. I had finally chosen my own peace over her chaos. I had chosen to protect my sanctuary rather than let it be consumed by someone who would never be full. And standing there in the cool night air, surrounded by the scent of pine and the sound of the lake, I realized that being selfish was the best decision I had ever made. Sarah was left with nothing, it was true. But she had arrived with nothing too. I hadn't taken anything from her that she hadn't already thrown away. She had to build her own life now, brick by brick, without a safety net to catch her when she decided to jump. It was the hardest lesson, but the only one that might actually save her. As for me, I had my cabin back. But more importantly, I had myself back. And that was worth every scratch in the floorboards.